Founder of Restful Sleep MD. So now we are in the midst of viral season, right? A lot of kids are sick. RSV infection is really at an all-time high. For this time of the year, we really usually don't see it peak around here. We're also seeing a lot of viruses like influenza virus, as well as COVID. We've been in this pandemic for a while. And one thing that we know is that when kids are sick, then their sleep gets disrupted, right? So today we're going to be talking about how we can optimize our children's sleep even during an illness. And I think this is something that's important because sleep plays a big role in our susceptibility to infections and in our ability to recover from infections, because sleep has been shown to help in regulating our immune system. And that's been through different mechanisms. So there's this cells in our body, kind of fighter cells, we call them natural killer cells, that essentially, when we sleep well, increases the activity of those cells, to fight infection and things like that. And then there's also, when you don't sleep well, you have increased inflammation, increased cortisol, and a lot of other what we call inflammatory agents that really not helpful for our immune system. So we do need sleep to recover. If we don't sleep well, we're likely to catch more viral illnesses. So here are a few things. When your child is sick, that's not the time, if you're in the process of sleep training them or things like that, that might not be the best time to start, right? So what I suggest is realizing that during an illness, your child needs all the love, all the support that they can get so that they can recover effectively. But as well, they do need to sleep well when they're sick. So I'm going to be talking about 4 things that I want you to pay attention to when your child is dealing with an illness and what you can do to optimize their sleep. Now, the first is normal sleep and nap routines. And this is helpful because, one, this is something that's familiar for your child. This is the way that your child is going to be cued to sleep. They may need a little bit more sleep during the time when they're ill. As an adult, you probably have experienced, you tend to be a little bit more tired and things. So that's okay. But really trying to maintain routines as best as possible is going to be helpful in getting them to mend, in getting them to sleep well. The second, like I just mentioned in number 1 briefly, is that you want to allow longer naps if needed. So usually I tend to recommend limiting naps to, about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. But if your child needs like 2.5 to 3 hours of a nap, I think that's okay. By the time they start to get to that 2.5 to 3 hour window, you may want to start to cut it so that they can eat, they can stay hydrated, they can get fluids and things like that in their system, which is going to be very important. So again, be aware if your child, for instance, if you had an older child who wasn't taking naps previously, they may need to take some naps during the day, and that is welcome. They need it as their body is working on fighting those infections. Number 3 is try to do what you can to get them to stay in their room if possible, especially if you have an older child. The reason why is sometimes we do have situations where we bring them into our room and then they recover from the illness and they're like, wait, why would I want to go back to my room? Mommy's room is better, right? So try to see how much you can get them to stay in their room. That's actually better for them. That's an environment they already know, especially if your child has been used to sleeping independently, right? You may have a baby monitor, you may have ways to watch them, but try to keep them in their room. And if you are concerned, if they have like a high fever, if they have any breathing issues or whatever, then you may want to maybe camp out in their room during that time, just to kind of keep an eye on them. That's fine. But you know what? If that doesn't seem to work for you, that is okay as well. That's my recommendation. But again, you may need to move things around depending on what your specific situation is. And now number 4 is keep them as comfortable as possible as they recover. And this is really important. And this is why I wouldn't push for you to try to get your child to cry it out or suck it up or sleep on their own if they're not able to. So if they need a little bit of rocking, if they need you to hold them, if they need you to sort of be there for them, that is fine, especially if your child has mastered independent sleep in the past. Usually they're able to relearn those skills. And so what does making them as comfortable as possible is, especially if they're struggling with some kind of viral illness, a cold or whatever it is. One is, making sure that the fever is taken care of. So Tylenol, Motrin, things like that, of course, in consultation with your doctor, that's really important. Number two is things like having a cool mist humidifier, and that's really helpful for kids who are very congested. It helps them to, breathe a little better, breathe a little bit more comfortable. Another thing along the lines of that breathing piece is you may want to try either nasal drops. Sometimes we'll do what we call nasal irrigation or saline nose drops and things like that. And that is to keep the passages nice and moist and open. Okay, so that's something that you may want to consider, again, to promote comfort, because when your child is congested, then they're going to wake up frequently at night. So you want to make sure that their nasal passages are as clear as possible. And then another one you can consider is like a steam bath. That also helps with breathing and all that. Now, if you do have a child who has wheezing, who has difficulty breathing, or you have a child who has had fever for more than 2 or 3 days, please, please, please reach out to your doctor, because something else may be brewing and you just want to make sure that you're on the right path, okay? Again, remember, this is not direct medical advice. This is just really helping you to think about strategies that can help your child sleep well. And then another thing that I would say along the lines of keeping them as comfortable as possible is snuggles. If they need those snuggles, you do want to give it to them. Just be cautious to make sure they don't get you sick as well, because if you are sick, then who's going to take care, right? So make sure that, you're doing this, you're there to support them, you're there to give those snuggles if they need them. And then while you're doing that, though, you want to encourage hand washing. You want to encourage those around them to wash their hands, siblings as well, because you don't want the germs spreading around the entire house. All right. And now, when they're done, recovered from the illness, what do you do? And so that's where you're going back to what you've done in the past to help them with their sleep. So whether they were, you were on the path to sleep training them, whether they were already sleeping on their own, you really want to try to go back to that place. And it may take a few days for them to sort of figure it out, but that's what will happen. So just do go back to the previous, their healthy sleep habits as much as possible. And so I hope this has been helpful. So really, we've talked about how sleep plays such a critical role to illness, how it's so important that we ensure that our kids get as much sleep as possible when they are sick, and what are we going to do to make sure that we're optimizing sleep for our kids, knowing that they do most likely would need a little more sleep when they're ill than when they're well. So if this has been helpful, I would love it if you share this video, if you like my channel, if you subscribe to it, and then just comment, let me know how this resonates. And I hope you stay safe out there. And until next time, I hope you rest well.